Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder if all that screen time your little ones are getting is actually hurting their development? Well, this new study from Iran dives deep into that exact question, and the results might surprise you. This research looks at the very first generation of kids growing up totally surrounded by smartphones and tablets from the moment they are born, what they call the digitally native generation. The big question here is, does screen time harm these young children's development? And can parents helping them watch actually make a difference? That common advice to co-view or watch together. So what did they find? The big takeaway is that for these young Iranian children, screen time was seriously linked to poorer development across the board. And here is the kicker, the parental co-viewing, that idea of watching together. It didn't seem to help at all. The researchers figured out why. The study's authors point out that most of the research on co-viewing comes from Western countries. They wondered if it might be different somewhere else, and if maybe co-viewing means different things in different cultures. They also noticed that past studies often don't separate out just being there with the child from actively talking and engaging with them during screen time. So how did they figure this out? They did something called a mixed method study. First, they had over 200 mothers fill out online surveys about their kids' screen time, what they watched, and how they watched it. Then they took about 50 of these families and invited them in for a more in-depth look. This second group had their children undergo a formal developmental assessment called the ASQ-3. Which looks at 5 different areas of development, and the mothers also had in-person interviews. Now, for the really interesting results, when they looked at the kids' screen time, they found a really strong link between spending more time on screens and having lower scores on all 5 developmental areas of the ASQ-3, including communication, motor skills, problem solving, and social-emotional skills. The correlation for the total developmental score was super strong, meaning as screen time went up, development tended to go down. In fact, screen time alone explained over 75% of the differences they saw in the children's overall development scores. That's a huge amount. They also looked at maternal screen time, meaning how much the moms used their phones or tablets while they were with their kids. This is called technofrence. They found that moms using screens more in front of their kids was linked to lower scores in fine motor skills, personal social skills, and the total developmental score. But this effect was much smaller than the child's own screen time. So, while it seems to play a role, it is not as big a factor as the child's direct screen exposure. This is where it gets really important for parents who are trying to do their best. They tested if co-viewing or watching with the child made a difference. Did it protect kids from the negative effects of screen time? And the answer was no. Even when moms watched with their kids, it didn't seem to buffer or lessen the negative impact of screen time on development. The lines on the graph looking at kids with high and low co-viewing were pretty much the same, showing that co-viewing didn't change the relationship between screen time and development. So, why wasn't co-viewing protective? This is where the interviews with the mothers really shine a light. They found 3 main themes. The first theme was what they called the pseudo-cognitive development paradox. Mothers would often point to things like their child knowing colors or numbers, or having a bigger vocabulary as signs of learning from screens. But these surface-level achievements didn't actually show up as higher scores on the real developmental tests. It was like the parents thought their kids were learning, but the kids weren't developing certain core skills as well. The second theme was about the negative impacts they noticed. Mothers talked about irritability when screens were turned off, difficulty transitioning to other activities, and a general lack of interest in physical play. Some even mentioned sleep problems and being more easily distracted. This suggests that screens were displacing time for more beneficial activities. And this third theme is the key to understanding the co-viewing finding. Mothers describe being present with their children during screen time not as an active teaching moment, but as a way to manage the chaos of daily life. They said things like, "It is the only way I can feed him without crying and fighting," or "If he does not watch 2 hours of cartoons, I cannot get housework, cooking, and my professional duties done." The mothers were physically in the room, but their minds were elsewhere, busy with chores or just trying to get a moment of rest. So, what does this all mean? The researchers strongly believe that screen time reduction should be the main focus of any interventions or advice for parents of young children. Co-viewing, if it is just being in the same room, isn't the magic bullet people hoped for. They suggest that if we recommend co-viewing, we need to be super specific. It is not just about being there, it is about actively engaging, asking questions, connecting what is on screen to the child's life, naming things. That is the active mediation that might actually help. Without that, it's just passive presence. And that parental technofrence, the mom or dad being on their phone while with the child, is also something to pay attention to. Reducing that is a helpful, even if it is a secondary strategy to protect child development. Now, it's always good to look at the limitations of any study. This one was cross-sectional, meaning they looked at things at a single point in time. This makes it hard to say for sure that screens cause the developmental issues, as it is possible kids with existing delays might get more screen time as a way for parents to cope, a sort of reverse causation. Also, they relied on mothers' reports of screen time, which can be a bit tricky, and the sample size, while good for a qualitative study, was relatively small for the statistical analyses, especially the moderation part. This means the exact numbers should be looked at with a bit of caution, but the overall pattern is pretty clear. So, to wrap it all up, this study across urban Iran really highlights the power of screens in affecting early childhood development. It shows that for this digitally native generation, prioritizing screen time reduction is key. And when we talk about parents being involved, it is crucial to emphasize active engagement, not just being in the same room, especially when parents themselves are juggling so much. It's a reminder that the context where research is done really matters and can shape how we understand things like parenting and technology. What do you all think about these findings? Does this resonate with your own experiences or what you've seen? Let me know in the comments below, and if you found this breakdown helpful, please give it a thumbs up. Share it with any parents you know. And don't forget to subscribe to Rubin's Mind Lab for more insights into the fascinating world of psychology. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.